we heard it was just like a trailer from Dr. Mashelkar. I would now request Shri Jagdale to initiate the keynote. As we are all aware, this keynote is about the Igniting Startup India. It's over to you, Mr. Jagdale, to give us, tell us more about Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar. Most of us know, but still, your perspective, and then the session will continue.
My dear friends, I am too little to introduce Dr. Mashelkar. Sir, may I request you to come on the dais, please?
That's the innovation I love, honestly. Let me say straight away, it's a great honor and a privilege to have been asked to give this keynote. So thank you, Rajendra, for giving me this opportunity to share my own thoughts. I shared some of them in the morning, and I assure you that none of what I said in the morning I'm going to repeat. All right? So it's a completely different. I've chosen the title rather deliberately. I'm talking about Igniting Startup India. Now, what do we do when one has to do the ignition? You have to have the right environment, right? The hydrocarbon mixture, the right composition, and so on. But it doesn't get ignited till you light a match, and then boom, it goes. So how do you do that? I think that's going to be the issue that I'm going to talk about. I think, if I remember, about a week ago, we had some other program, and there a little child came, and he talked about children's rights. Very eloquent. She spoke in Marathi, that little girl, you know, for 3 to 4 minutes. And she talked about children's rights, and one of the rights she mentioned was right to education. And I had to speak after her for a couple of minutes. And I said she had talked about her rights, right to education, but right to education is not enough. There has to be right education. And that right education will be provided by us. So Joshiji, I talked about her right, but our responsibility. In the same way, when we talk about an ignited mind, we talk about the young of the country, 55% population being less than 25. They are ignited minds, but if we have unignited mindsets all around, which doses that fire, then nothing will happen. So I think our bigger challenge is not just Startup India, which is just a part of it, or ecosystem for Startup India, which is just a sub-part of building a total innovation ecosystem, so as to say. And I'm going to reflect sort of on that. I'm very happy that we are talking about Make in India, for example. Again, our Prime Minister has given us that challenge. It's an interesting challenge. In fact, yesterday I was speaking in some other international fora, and I made that point, and I will like to repeat here. Once again, the challenge is Make in India based on science-led innovation done in India. Okay? And the example I gave was a simple one. Foxconn, for example, they make iPhones in China, and 4.5 million jobs are created. That's wonderful, because we also want job-led growth. But they take away $10 profit for one smartphone that they sell. And Apple takes away $350. Okay? So what are the choices that a country like India has? One is do this, get $10, but 4.5 million jobs. The other one is this, fine, but use something inside here. That's what Apple has done. That's why they take 35 times more, $350. But few jobs, not 4.5, only high-tech jobs. The third model is you do this, get 4.5 million. You use this, get $350, both. Now, can we do that by creating the apples of this world in India? That is the challenge. And I told you in the morning about the new aspiration that we'll create our own Microsofts, our own Googles, etc., the young people, their aspiration? Can we support them by creating an environment which actually provides that? I think that is one challenge. The second challenge I find is that of science-led innovation. We have a lot of Flipkarts and Snapdeals and Olas, etc. It's fine. I admire them from a distance. I have no issue on that. But there is what is called a science-led innovation. Just now, Renu and I were talking about biotechnology. It's a different ballgame altogether in comparison to the rest that we talk about. And that science-led innovation is extremely critical. Cambridge University has set up, the Vice Chancellor, has set up what is called as an advisory circle of advisors. Circle of advisors. We have the meeting on the 13th, I think, 13th in the evening. There are some 6 or 7 members. Ratan Tata happens to be a member, I happen to be a member, and other. And Sir Boris, the Vice Chancellor, was making a presentation a couple of years ago when it started, and he said at that time, and that number has changed now, that Cambridge has got 86 Nobel laureates, one single university. But it has had 1,500 startups, okay, creating 54,000 jobs. 5 of the companies are $1 billion plus, and 2 of them are $10 billion. So no issue. Nobel laureates, Saraswati, and those billions of dollars, Lakshmi. So somehow or other they have got it right, Saraswati and Lakshmi. I think in India that is a big challenge. Joshiji, we do Saraswati Puja on one day and Lakshmi on the other day. The route from Saraswati to Lakshmi we have not found. As I mentioned in the morning, I spent my October in Harvard University as a visiting professor, and George Whitesides is a close friend, by the way, and look at him, what does he do? He's the highest cited scientist in the world. Joshiji, his H index, 186, basically, which is twice that of the best that we have here in India. Okay? So Saraswati. But the market cap of the companies that he has floated is $30 billion. Saraswati and Lakshmi going together, no issue at all, somehow or the other. I think that is what we have to learn, as a matter of fact. How do we do that? And that is why I'm delighted to see so many from the universities and others gathering together, to see that route from Saraswati to Lakshmi. In the morning, I mentioned about talent, technology, and trust, and I did not have time to elaborate because I just had a few minutes. But let me elaborate on one of the points, and that has to deal with trust. I remember about 6 or 7 years ago in Delhi, Bill Gates had come and there was a dinner come discussion with him, about 2.5 hours. And the people who joined him for that dinner come discussion included Nandan Nilekani, Anand Mahindra, Arun Maira, Ravi Venkatesan, and myself, 5 of us. And I remember Bill Gates telling us something interesting. He said he was giving the address in Harvard University, and in that address he said, I declared myself as the most successful dropout from Harvard, which he was, obviously. But then he told us a very interesting story in his early life. He said a company in Albuquerque was going to set up, those were early days of computers, so computer hardware. So he said if they are going for hardware, they will require software. So he phoned them up. He was barely 19-year-old or something like that. And he told us that he half expected, when he said that I will supply you the software, because those were early days, he thought they will keep the phone down. They did not. You know what they did? They said, we are not ready. Wait for a month. Come back to us after a month. And then what he said was even more interesting, because he said, thank God they said come after a month. I had nothing when I said, I will give it to you. I think that is trust. They had trust in a young man, an unknown young man, and he had a trust in himself, so as to say. I think that is something that we need to learn and develop. That means, Pratap Rao, actually a social, cultural revolution, I would say, in India, you know. And that has come to them very naturally. I mean, today we talk about Google, but many of you will know that Google was just a Stanford project, by the way, the Google search engine. And somebody suggested to them that they should meet and get some finance, and they went to Sun Microsystem. Andy was there, and the story is a very interesting one because they had a laptop on which they demonstrated the Google search engine. And the story goes that before they finished the presentation, within 5 minutes, Andy picked out a checkbook and wrote $100,000 and gave it to them. Trust. And they had a challenge because they had not formed the company. So they had to deposit that check only when they formed the company. But that tells you what the trust is all about. Now I'll give you the contrast. This afternoon, Ashish Gowde came to me. We were talking about something. And he has actually created a company called Geotronics. What does it do? You know, one of the challenges in India, by the way, is to go for what you might like to call as affordable excellence. Now you would say, oh my God, what is affordable can't be excellent, what is excellent cannot be affordable. Zoshi, that is what I was telling you, that you have to do something which is 10 times better but 10 times cheaper. Because affordability and accessibility is key. So in that domain, he's working in the health area, okay? And also fundamentally, if you look at startups, they go for exploration, they have to look at the entrepreneurship, that's all fine. They go for experimentation, all these E's are fine, but the most important is empathy. And empathy with customer is what we talk about, but here empathy for society is equally important, okay? So therefore, in that context, what they have done is that they have developed what is called as a defibrillator. You know, when heart stops, let us say, or quivers many times, you have to give a shock, basically, you know, and that is normally given by automatic external defibrillators so that the heart restarts. Very expensive. So they took up the challenge of developing something that will be inexpensive, but more importantly, in villages you don't have electricity. In cities, there are breakdowns of power shortage. I mean, power shortage is there, but even the breakdowns, you know, because we suffer from quality. So they said that we'll create something which can work in a village, which is hand cranked. And it is hand cranked, and within 12 seconds you can generate 2000 volts and 200 joule, basically. That is the innovation that they have done. 3 US patents, by the way, already. You know what was their challenge? When they went and tried to sell the idea and also the machine, they said no, but unless it is verified from there. You know what is there? US. We won't. And the poor fellows were going today to Michigan, by the way, Michigan University. They have established some contact, etc. Where is the trust? I think that's a challenge. But with every bad news, I will give you good news. My lectures are always bad news followed by good news, by the way. And I will end with good news. Okay? Now, here is a good news. In the same category, since we are talking about startups, we are talking about empathy. We talk about inclusive innovation, which includes everyone, not just select part of the sort of society. I have created what is called as Anjani Mashelkar Inclusive Innovation Award. Anjani Mashelkar is my mother, by the way, who has been my inspiration. And she always told me, do something by which poor will be helped. What is the use of your science? So we created that award. This is the 6th year of the award. Last year, that award went to one young man, Rahul Rastogi, just 30 years. I'll tell you about the empathy part of it and the innovation part of it. What happened was, his father was down with heart issues. And therefore, in the middle of the night, he had to take him to a hospital to take an ECG. And you know the cumbersome process by which ECG is taken. I mean, you lie down and then the leads and the rest of it. So he's an electronic wizard, and he said to himself, why can't I create something which I can carry in my pocket? All right? But which will be as good. Because you can't compromise, you know, the quality of ECG. So he created something which is absolutely outstanding. And what he presented on 17 November was this, Sanket. How does it work? It is 6 lead at the time, that is 17 November is the date my mother passed away, so we give these awards on 17 November. So you put your thumbs here, basically, okay, and this is a sensor, and there are positions around the heart, okay. There is an app that is downloaded on the physician's smartphone, so as to say. Cloud he uses for storage, and the rest of it, so it's a digital way all the time. So within 4 minutes, the physician has it in his hand, so as to say. Now, I am a 10x guy, by the way. So when we gave him the award, it is always for me doing 10 times better, but 10 times lower cost. So I said, you have to reduce your cost factor of 10. So he said, it will require some development funding. Okay? I said, how much? He said, 46 lakhs. I remember going to Tata Trust, where they had called me about, where will the future be in innovation and what should we be doing. So I carried this, showed it to them, demonstrated it, basically, for real effect. And they said, then I told them that this is version 1, version 2 will require 46 lakh. Can you just believe it? In 48 hours, they gave 46 lakhs. Trust. Net result of that is this version 2, which is not 6 leads, Joshi, it is 12 lead now. And before giving him the award, by the way, I had got it tested from some of the best heart experts that we have, and they say it is as accurate. Joshi, how much does it take to get an ECG? Roughly how much charge? No, but anybody? 500 bucks. You know what will it take to take ECG? 3 rupees. 500 to 3. So I was talking about 10x, he had done 100x, basically. I think this story actually tells you about that tripod that I talked about. The talent on one side, he had that. Technology, because here, by the way, it is 30% hardware, 70% is a very clever software, by the way. That is what is doing the job. And trust, the way Tata's came in. Of course, T in Tata stands for trust only. I mean, as you know, I mean, it's an incredible organization. I think we need more of that. And I would simply say that whenever we have seen success stories, and one of the great success stories is sitting right here, Pramod Chaudhary, for example. I remember my early experiences. India's first venture capital company was TDICI, which was managed by ICICI. World Bank actually set it up. And I joined the board in late 80s. And I remember Pramod, your Praj, and the other one that we betted on was Kiran Muzumdar, Biocon, and you have been such spectacular successes. All right? And you are first generation entrepreneurs at that point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, all that I'm saying is that whether it is Pramod, whether it is Kiran, whether it is Rastogi that I talked about, etc., at the end of it, how do we make that possible is going to be the biggest challenge. And that is what my complaint in the morning stands. The early stage financing that you talk about, venture capital is fine, by the way. But they will look at your business plan, this, that, and the other. You would have proved your prototype. You would have got some 3 customers to show that they're working, etc. Before that, what do we do? Pratap Rao, this is our biggest challenge. Because ideas are like seeds. But you don't eat seed, you eat fruit. And for fruit, you have to grow a tree. So what do? You put that seed in a fertile soil, because if it is infertile, it will not grow. And you start giving inputs, isn't it? Fertilizer, nutrients, water, etc. That is how it grows into plantlet. And that plantlet, then we protect. Fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, etc. Let it grow. And after it comes to a particular size, then the rest happens. And that is where VCs come. Pratap Rao, the biggest challenge here, since you were not there in the morning and I was complaining, is 113 crore is all that we have spent in 2016. $20 million on angel investing, early stage, seed funding. $20 million, how can we have that particular dream? And therefore, when we are setting up all these funds, etc., whether they are high net worth individuals or whether government or whoever it is, basically, if this is not done, fundamentally, it will not work. And that has to be on the basis of trust. T capital, trust. I think that's one issue that I wanted to talk about. The other issues that I wanted to briefly touch upon is the following. There is a report, Startup Outlook India 2016, which has just come, by the way. I invite you to read that. And 150 founders across bootstrapped, angel-funded, VC-funded companies they have interviewed, by the way. And there are a number of issues that they talk about, including the pain points, and I think we need to focus on those pain points, you know. But 72% of them feel that Indian education system is not preparing future employees into skills, you know, which will be important for them. I don't find that getting discussed as much as one would like to see, because it's a majority. Because at the end of it, hiring and managing that talent and getting that talent is going to decide our future. Talent, technology, and trust. The right talent has to be there. And therefore, I think we need to work extremely seriously on this. Because entrepreneurship, technopreneurship, right, business, Lakshmi, doesn't come very easily to us, and particularly knowledge-based and so on. So I think we need to revisit our sort of education system. Pratap Rao, the top 5 skills that will be needed by 2020, people have talked about, and these happen to be very interesting. The first is managing complexity, because this is a VUCA word, you know, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. The second is critical thinking. The third is creativity. The fourth is emotional intelligence. And the fifth is co-working, all right, ability to co-create. And that co-creation is not going to be a man interacting with man, man interacting with machine, by the way. All right, we don't talk about robots anymore, we talk about cobots. You know, the new companies that are basically coming up. I think we have to revisit our education system and ask ourselves as to whether we are giving those sort of skills. And in this particular case, it becomes very important. You'll remember, Pratap Rao, in the last press conference, I was asked a very challenging question. Because what has happened is, IIT Bombay, if you remember, they have banned, you know, or blacklisted or whatever it is, because, you know, you go on the campus and do campus interviews, okay? And based on the results of the campus interview, when you offer a job, you are supposed to stand by the job, you know, the offer of the job. Apparently, some companies have defaulted on that, so they have stopped, and rightly so. But many of those companies are startup companies. The basic challenge, therefore, is that if they are going to be stopped, that is what that correspondent was asking me, how would they get the talent that you talked about? And that's the right question. So I think if you have to deep dive into this, even when they take up a job, how do they take up a job? Because they get enamored by the small pitch that all startups give, isn't it? By practice, 3 minutes, right? In 180 seconds, you have to deliver. And they get carried away and sort of take it up. They don't have the ability to spot, supposing there are 6 startups, each one making a pitch. The poor guys, young guys, don't have the ability to sort of spot as to whether their business model is viable, you know, the sustainability and the rest of it, the growth prospects, etc. So they join. So I think I'm suggesting to this gathering that this is a subject which has never been discussed so far. Okay? Because if best talent has to go to the best sort of startups, we need to start looking at the HR issue of this kind and how these skills can be given as a part of the educational curriculum, or maybe when you do career counseling, but it will require not superficial, very deep-driven this thing. So, technopreneurship, these issues, basically, I think they must start finding a place in our curriculum. That is, the third thing that I want to sort of emphasize is science-led innovation, like I mentioned a little earlier. Our Science Advisory Committee with the Prime Minister, I was a member of that, and we brought out a document which is on the web, by the way. It is science-led innovation. It's a 10-point agenda, right? I'm not talking about e-commerce startups here. I'm talking about deep science-led breakthroughs which lead to innovation. And those of you who are interested, my website, www.mashelkar.com, has this particular paper, by the way, and you will find sort of number of points in that which might be useful to you. The other point I wanted to mention is in the morning there was a lot of talk about job-led growth, not jobless growth. And the minister was absolutely right in that, because with 55% of India being young 25, if you look at the challenge that we have, is technology-led jobless growth, basically, because of automation and advanced robotics and artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. And if one feels that is all happening up there and not here, we are mistaken, by the way. I was talking to somebody who has been a magnate in textiles just last month, and he was telling me very proudly that I had 400 jobs in a particular unit. Now I'm doing it with 10. And if you look at the Martin School report that has come up, they say 47% of the current jobs will vanish in the US within 20 years. But as against that 47%, from India, 69%, and from China, 77%, basically. Of course, subject to technology readiness. So they have another table which shows technology readiness and then how many jobs will go. So as far as 47% is concerned, it will remain 47% for US because they are technology ready. For China, from 77, it will come to 55 because they are more technology ready than India. And for us, 47%, but it still means 1 out of 2 jobs will go. And therefore, job-led growth is very important. So I was happy to see the statistics, 5,000 jobs, 130 startups within the next 12 months, that is the prediction. We need more of that because I think in everything that we say, we have to add a zero. Not 10 times, 100 times, basically, because we are talking about a country of 1.25 billion, by the way. All right? So our demands are very different. So our aspirations, our ambitions, that's the exponential part that I talked about in the morning. And there was a beautiful analysis that was done, I understand, as to what does it take to create one job. And startups come up at the top, isn't it? And that is why pushing this is going to sort of help India's quest into creating job-led growth rather than jobless growth. The other good news, I'm giving you some of the good news, bad news and good news. The good news is 25% of all startups had a female co-founder. Again, our challenge is to move it from 25 to 50% because 50% India, right? And 50% India. So I think we have to sort of move on that. I think that is very important. Government is doing a lot. There is no question about that. And I'm very happy those who are doing it are right here. Whether it is Malik, whether it is you, I mean, all of you basically have done so much. Department of Science and Technology, I must applaud. Their Nidhi program, which is national initiative on development, harnessing, and innovation, really outstanding contribution. Malik is very modest, he will not tell you, but when the minister says they have done 100 incubators, it is all done by him, by the way, single person, as a matter of fact. He deserves a round of applause. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So that's wonderful. Renu, your own contributions in BIRAC have been phenomenal. I have watched you sort of from close quarters. I am very happy that the budgets for NST, DB have gone up by a factor of 5 from 40 crores to 200 crores. So government is pushing more and more money. That's wonderful. Of course, being me, I would like to add one more zero, but let's see. All right, Atal Innovation Mission is also sort of up there. I'm very happy that it's not only about new incubators and known incubators for scaling up. But also, it all begins when you are young, right? And that is where I remember I was a member of the Prime Minister's National Innovation Council, and we had talked about Tod Phod Jod. That means you break and reassemble, because our children are not allowed to ask questions, are not allowed to play around. Te uslu na ko padel, tutel, all that has to go, and therefore those centers. And I'm very happy, there is a different title, of course, Tinkering Labs, but it means Tod Phod Jod. They are starting. I don't bother about labels, by the way. Okay, labels will keep on changing, but activities are sort of very important, because for our young people to be able to do that, even our, I want to mention to my friends from abroad that even our toys are static. You don't sort of play around and sort of create things. So I think it has to start from there. There was a program that I remember I had created. It was called TEP, right? Technopreneurship program. And there we had taken extreme steps to talk in terms of making small money available without bank guarantee, because many of those young people who come, they don't have even bank accounts, right? Of course, now there is a program called Prayas, which is again something similar. Again, I don't worry about the titles, but basically that same spirit that, what I always used to say was in .com days, the only .com India requires is hassle-free.com. And I'm delighted that the government is trying to do it sort of hassle-free. There are a number of initiatives that have been taken. Starting a business has been made easy now. Shutting a business has been made easy. On intellectual property front, there are support systems that are being created now, fast-tracking, financing, and the rest of it. Innovation funds have been created under Atal Innovation Fund. You heard about it in the morning. Basically, of course, we can always do better, like what we talked about, but these are great initiatives. And one of the initiatives I love most is on public procurement, basically. Because, you see, I remember I was a member of the Technology Development Board also, and I remember our funding Shanta Biotech, right? India's first recombinant DNA vaccine for hepatitis B. Varaprasad Reddy, you remember? Finally, he got 40% of UNICEF supply. But in India, he struggled, all right, because the same rules were being applied to him as... So I think that has to change, and I'm delighted that the government is sort of putting in this. I think we need to do, of course, more, but what they have done is, I think, absolutely right in terms of creating that hassle-free.com. We'll require more of it. At the end of the day, you remember Ashok Jhunjhunwala from IIT. Joshiji, he had created wireless local loop way ahead of the rest of the world. Finally, it got implemented in Brazil and Madagascar first before it came to India. This is not done. So I think what the government is now doing will help to make sure that there is an Indian innovation, it will get implemented in India. That's extremely sort of important, and we have to move towards that. I think the final point that I want to make, because my 30 minutes are getting over, is the following. Because a lot of young people are there, and based on my own experience, I'm an old man, I'll tell you a few golden rules that you might want to remember, and just 5 of them. I believe in all 5, Panchashil, if you like. I think the first thing is your aspirations are your possibilities. So keep your aspirations high, Even in times of scarcity, it is a deadly combination of scarcity and aspiration that makes a difference. My guru, C.K. Prahlad, used to say, there is what is called as resource, and there is what is called as aspiration. Okay? And he said, as resources go up, aspirations come down. And he said, keep your aspiration always above resource. I think that's very important. The second is no substitute to hard work. Even as an old man, I'm doing 24/7, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and there are witnesses here, like Prashant. Basically, there is nothing like an instant coffee, by the way. There is no instant success, basically. And your overnight success is always the result of everything that you have done through that moment. That's what Steve Jobs says. I would like to sort of, because Steve Jobs is like an icon, I want to sort of quote him. I think, like he said, if you look closely, most overnight successes took a long time. That's what he actually said. So please, that is the second. The third is wrong to wait for opportunities to knock on your door. And if opportunity does not knock, build a door. So not seize opportunities, create opportunities. I think that's very important. You will always find that will work. The other one is that there are a lot of no sayers. So if somebody tells you it can't be done, make a reflection and say that it is more a reflection of his or her limitation, not yours. I think that's very important. In fact, there is a definition of an innovator. Two definitions I like, by the way. One is innovator is one who sees what everybody else sees, but thinks of what nobody thinks. And the other one is innovator is one who does not know it can't be done. I think that is how sort of the Steve Jobs of this word actually happened. And last is about your ambition. Mr. Mukesh Ambani and I were talking one day, and he said, "Doc, we must leapfrog." So I said, "Mukesh, I don't believe in leapfrogging." He said, "What?" I said, "I believe because frog only leaps that much. And those of you who have studied the science of leapfrogging, you will find that frog leaps because he's afraid, by the way, of a predator. I don't want people to jump a little bit simply because you are threatened." I said, pole vaulting. The size of the pole determines where you will land. Take a 1,000,000-meter pole and you will cross continents, basically. I think that is very, very important. All right. In fact, believing on that, we have created within Reliance, I chair the Reliance Innovation Council, by the way, and we have created a program called Beyonders. So out of 100,000 employees, we have created around 30-35 who are able to think beyond, by the way, and they're being taken from a different route altogether, because at the end of it, it's all about doing something that is game-changing. I started with the bad news that it's only 113 crore. Let me end with the good news. And the good news is, as I said, there is a 62% increase from previous year. And if you go back, you will find there has been a 10-fold increase in 4 years. I think that's great. So let me end, with a little message based on a story that is very close to my heart. And that is lilies in the pond. There was this pond where lilies were growing, and they're very interesting habit. They will double up every day. So on day 2, they were twice of day 1. Day 3, they were twice of day 2. Now here is a puzzle. In 30 days, that pond was full. So let me ask this audience, on which day will it be half full? 29th. So half full on 29th, 28th it will be quarter full, 27, 1/8, and 26, 1/16. 6%, right? 1/16 is 6%. So if you had visited that pond or lake on 26th day, you would have found 6% filled, 94% empty, right? So you would have given it up. Like many people give up India, right? But you don't know what that pond is doing. I mean, what those lilies are doing. So you don't know that within 4 days it is going to be full and you are going to be surprised. Ladies and gentlemen, India is that lilies in the pond. Come next year, come the following year, and you will see the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for, as usual, the highly inspiring and motivating talk. It goes without saying. Let's give once again a huge round of applause, and let's hope that Shri Mashelkar will continue to motivate the all types of generation, not just the science and technology fraternity, but the entire Indian fraternity. Thank you, sir.